Hello everyone and welcome back. Welcome back to these videos in which I'm doing quick little how-tos. This one is dedicated to group making. Just a heads up, there will be a few videos dedicated to group making since there are many possibilities of types of groups you can make. And then also there's such thing as something called groupings. And I hope that across the next few videos I can clarify the different types of groups, how to then apply those groups to forums and assignments, as well as what groupings are and how they're different from groups. So here we are back on my course page that I created, this fictitious ARTH 303. I'm going to go ahead and turn editing on. And like I said, there are three types of groups that you can make. It's important to note that it doesn't really mean anything to make groups on their own. You have to then apply those groups to something like a forum or an activity or an assignment. And so what I'm going to summarize is basically a workshop that Anna Sokolovskaya from IITS held just a few days ago for some of the faculty in the department, and she showed us how to make these different types of groups. So the first one that I'm going to demonstrate is the group self-selection activity. This requires the least amount of work for you from instructors because you just set it up as an activity on the home page, on the home course page, and then students will sign themselves up for those groups. Depending on the class, it's important that you preset these groups. So let's say, for example, here at the beginning of my course, something like here this week, July 5th to July 11th, I would like students to be thinking about maybe a presentation that they want to give or something like that. So you can do add an activity or resource. And you have, just like anything else, you have this activity here called group self-selection. So you click that and then you say add. All right, so the name of this activity, I'll just call it final presentations. And I'll say, please select your date for presentations. And I'll say, maybe I'll display the description on the course page. Here, here you have the choice of asking your students to sort of decide on their groups by a certain date. So if you click enable on both of these boxes, you can decide, okay, so as of today, July 27th, at 1:06 p.m., students can start putting themselves into groups. But then maybe I want them to decide by the 31st, Friday the 31st at 5 o'clock p.m. I want them to decide, have selected their groups. So that's what you can set up. If you want it to just stay open, you don't have to enable these boxes. You can just uncheck them. So now that that's done, you'll see here minimum members per group, maximum members per group, and the maximum number of groups that the students can participate in. So of course I'm going to leave this at 1 because I don't want the students registering for more than one slot for their presentation. But let's say my class currently has 20 students in it. So I'm going to say maybe I don't want it to be too disbalanced between the 2 days. So if you want, you can split it right in half and say the maximum number of slots on one day is 10. And for the minimum number, maybe I'll just say 5, or maybe I'll make it 10 as well. So that way everyone has to register. But if you are making other types of groups, let's say you would like people to get into groups of 3, you can maybe make the minimum number of members 2 in case you have an odd number, and then the maximum number of students 3. So this is where you can play around with the numbers, and if ever a group is filled and there are already 3 people in it, that means the maximum number has been met and a student will no longer be able to add themselves to a group once there are 3 members in it. This is an important part of group making right here, because this is sort of how much power you decide to give to the students. So you want them to be able to, yes, join groups and leave groups as they please. Again, if you have set a timer here sort of on how much time they have to do that, that way you don't leave it sort of open forever for them to jump in and out of groups. But here you can say, yes, I want them to be able to join groups, no problem. And let's say before Friday they decide, oh, they want to switch groups. So this is important to leave that check mark open. So, I mean, checked so that they can leave a group and go into another one perhaps. But then once the deadline is met of this Friday, they won't be able to sort of jump in and out of groups anymore. This is an important one to think about depending on what your needs are or what you would like to design for the course. Participants can create their own groups. If you want students, if you don't want to preset the groups and you would like students to be able to make their own groups, like let's say we were making groups of 3 here. I'm going to put this back at 10 since that's not what I'm doing. But if you did want students to create their own groups, you could leave this check marked. But in our workshop with Anna, she recommended against it because let's say you have a really big class and Anna created a group and she told Johnny to come join her group, but Johnny didn't see her group was already created, so then they're each have created groups and they're sitting in their own groups waiting for the other person to join, and so it can get quite messy. So you can go ahead and uncheck that, but it's important to note that suddenly you can't uncheck these other boxes, the ability to name the group and the ability to edit the description. So if you also want to remove that privilege, you have to recheck this one so that these become an option. You can then uncheck them so that your students aren't putting obscene names or what have you, or changing the description of their groups. So you can remove that privilege, and then you can go ahead and uncheck their ability to create their own groups. You don't have to worry too much about a supervisor role because, in fact, both you as the instructor and if you have a TA, you both have sort of the ability to look in on everything that's happening in groups. You can also edit the groups manually if anything is to happen. So even though this is a group self-selection activity where people are signing themselves up for groups, you do have the power to go in and change that and look in on stuff and monitor everything. So you don't need to worry about supervisor roles. The only important thing is down here, it's best to uncheck this box that says delete group when last participant leaves, because for many reasons, in fact, you wouldn't want all the work that students might have done to disappear if something happens, like people leave the group or what have you. So just for safety and everything, uncheck this box so that groups don't start getting deleted left, right, and center. Now that all that's done, we can say save and display. Okay, so here it tells me that because I had a time selection, it says that this is open until Friday, the 31st of July at 5 p.m. That's the date by which students need to select their groups. But then it says no groups available to select from, sorry. So I'm going to troubleshoot here and go into manage groups. So here's where I can create groups. So I'm going to go ahead and create a group, and it will be called August 20th. So that's one of my dates, for example, maybe that I want students to sign up in. And I'm going to go ahead and create another group, and I'll call it August 22nd. So now there are these 2 dates. And if we go back to our homepage, here is the activity. So final presentations. Please select your date for presentation. We're still in editing mode, which is why everything looks like this and is movable. But if I go into here, okay, so now all of a sudden we see these two groups that exist. So there's a group called August 20th and a group called August 22nd. The description up here says select your date for presentations. If I wanted to, I could put a description in here saying on this day, you know, there will be a 15-minute break, you know, what have you. So if you wanted to put a description of what that group consists of, the count shows here how many people are sort of the maximum number of people that can be in this group. I put 10 for both of them. So far there are 0 registered, and the members would appear over here. And this is what you as an instructor will see, but also what the students will see. They'll see the option to become a member of this group or this group if they please. Now I'm just going to go ahead and jump over to the workshop that Anna held and make this full screen so that you can see what it looks like when groups have students registered for them. So here Anna did a similar thing where she, as the instructor of this group, of this course, made a group called Monday class and a group called Wednesday class as a way of sort of dividing up her presentations. And she has students that registered as members to present on the Monday class and some students who registered to present on the Wednesday class. You have the count here, 5 out of 15 and 6 out of 15. And again, these buttons remain here for you as an instructor. If you wanted to, you could join one of the groups, but it doesn't really matter because, as I said, you maintain the ability to look in on groups at all times. So that's one way in which you can create an activity where people can self-select or put themselves into groups. Another way could be to ask them to get into groups of 3 for conversations, such as like reading groups or discussion question sort of groups. And yeah, again, it appears here on your homepage as this sort of icon, meaning self-selection. But in the next other video, I will talk about how to auto-create groups such that it is neither the students nor you who decides who goes into which group. You can give all the information and ask Moodle to auto-create groups, or you can also manually create groups, which is where you have all the power and you do not give the students any power to decide what groups they go into. So manually creating groups happens over here under the administration block. So we'll see that in the next video.